I suppose with any small company and startup particularly, you're nervous, when you're taken over by a big corporation, that all the promises they make and all the things that you believed you were getting into will suddenly just sort of disappear once you're in the building. But actually it's been the opposite. I mean, for us now, 3 months, we're right beside News Corp, the headquarters here on 6th Avenue in New York. We're hiring, we're expanding, and the continual thing we realize inside News Corp is that there's a kind of a hunger for reinvention within News Corp. There's some really visionary people, and now essentially what they've done is they've brought in a kind of a disruptive force into the midst of all these different titles and mastheads. And we become, I think, are becoming kind of an R&D lab within News Corp. I really feel like every time I get up, there's a kind of a sense of exhortation. Bigger, better, more ambitious. And starting off 3 months ago, we were thinking like a startup. How do we gradually grow this business? Now 3 months in, it's like, well, how do you become a huge business? And that's a really big difference for us personally, but also as a statement about News Corp as well. It's been amazing for us because we were obviously nervous that people would turn around and go, well, you're now with a specific news organization, but actually we've been very careful, and so is News Corp, to maintain that independence. So we work, very, very closely with YouTube, for example, with Yahoo, with the New York Times, with international titles like the BBC. And what for us we need to be is like almost the Switzerland of news, in that we need to be completely neutral in terms of obviously our editorial approach, but also where the content goes and where it comes from. And I think News Corp recognized that. I mean, we have a stack of video that last month did 100 million views on our various different partner platforms. So we're agnostic about where this content goes. And in that sense, we are like the traditional news agency. We serve everybody and nobody in that sense. And I think News Corp has been very happy to preserve that integrity and independence. I think the spectrum of media that we're dealing with is growing. I think it'll always primarily be what we call now UGC, which is kind of an inadequate way of saying that people witness events before journalists do. And we're finding that piece of video that defines the narrative and the story. But I think what we'll be doing is looking at different verticals, from sports to fashion to entertainment, as well as the hard news content that we've traditionally dealt with. I think we'll also be dealing with brands, because brands and advertisers are doing what newspapers did 3 years ago, waking up to the fact that they need content that engages their audience. And so I think that sort of broadening of the spectrum for Storyful is going to be critical. For example, we did a project. We're working very closely with Post Studios, which is the custom content unit of the New York Post. And what we're doing is going to brands. In one case, the Tennis Channel was doing Indian Wells, the tournament. And we essentially just took all the content emerging from that tournament, we filtered it, we put a layer of journalism on top of it, we presented this beautifully addictive kind of VIP experience of that tournament. So there's an example of something we used to do for news, now we're doing for other verticals. So Storyful is a radar. We seek out the most compelling content in any vertical, in any location, for any customer. And that's, I think, allowed us to see a scale that perhaps other smaller startups in the new space haven't really got yet.